Maybe one of your first challenges while you're working on 2D projects is creating double and triple jumps. And at the end of this video, we're going to create something like this. So now let's start from scratch. Right now I have main camera in my scene, which is obvious to everyone. And I have environment, which basically concludes our platforms. And I have player, which is basically a simple sprite, like the walls, like the platforms. So now let's start by creating a new C# script, call it player movement, and open it in the Visual Studio. So now let's start by variables. So first of all, let's write a public float speed, which detects how fast player would be, and another public float that we will call it jump force for the height of our jump, and the private float move input. Which is basically detects we can move or not. And finally we will write private rigid body 2D and we will call it RB. And I will cast the RB in the start function. So let's write a start. And in here let's type RB would be equal to the get component. And in here we'll set rigid body 2D. So now let's get our character moving left and right. For doing this, let's first of all create a fixed update method, which is basically used by all of the physics related aspects in the game. And inside of it we will set move input would be equal to the input dot get axis, and in parentheses we will write horizontal, and our move input would be equal to the positive one if I press the right arrow key, and it would be equals to the -1 if I press the left arrow key. And one more line of code for moving. Let's write rb.velocity would be equal to the new vector 3. Vector 2, I'm sorry for that. And in parentheses for the x values, we will write move input multiply speed. And for y values, we will say rb.velocity.y. Heading back into the Unity. So now in here, let's first of all attach the script to the player. And after that, add a rigid body 2D and box slider 2D. And make sure all of the platforms have the box slider 2D component. Otherwise, the player will fall through the walls. And I put 8 for the speed value. And now our character can move it left and right. So now let's dealing with jump. So first of all we will need some variables. First of all we will need private bool is grounded. This is basically detects we're in the ground or not. So our trick in here is I want to draw a circle at the bottom of my character. And if that circle hits the ground, our isGround bool would be true. So for that we'll need a public transform, and I will call it ground check. After that we'll need another public float called check radius. And finally we'll write public layer mask what is ground. And now in the fix update method we will set is grounded equal physics2d dot overlap circle, And in parentheses, first of all, we have to set the position of our circle. So I will write checkpoint.position, gram check.position, sorry. And then we have to detect the radius of our circle. So for that, we will write check radius. And lastly, I have to put our gram mass, which is in our case with what is ground. Save the code and go back to the Unity. In here, first of all, let's create an empty game object, call it checkGround, and set a gizmo to it so we can see it better. And put it at the bottom of the player and set it as a child of it. And in our scripts field list, first of all, assign the checkGround to this field. And check radius in my case would be 0.3. And our ground would be ground. And I already add a ground layer to all of my platforms. But right now I cannot see the check ground circle. For solving this problem, we will need a little coding, maybe 2 or 3 lines of code. Go back to the Visual Studio, and in here let's write undraw gizmo selected. Undraw gizmo selected. For drawing the actual circle, we'll write gizmos dot draws wire sphere, draw wire sphere, and in parentheses we will set first of all we have to set the position of the circle, which is in our case is checkground.position, so checkground. And then we have to set the radius of our circle, which is check radius. And finally, which is not necessary, but I actually see my gizmos kind of black. So for solving that problem, let's write gizmos.color would be equal to color.black. And save the code and go back to the Unity. And now we can see our checkground circle. So final things for creating a jump. So first of all, we need 2 more variables. One of them would be private, and both of them would be integer. So private int, I will call it extra jump. And another one would be public int extra jumps value, something like that. And in the sub method we will set extra jumps value extra jump would be equal to the extra jumps value. So extra jumps value, which is we will actually set it in the Unity environment, is saying how many jumps we can do in the air. So for making a player jump, we will need update function. So let's call it update. And in here, let's first of all check if we actually hit the space button. So input dot get key down, key code to the space. And it would be true whenever I actually hit the space. And of course we will check if extra jumps are greater than, and we'll check if extra jumps is greater than 0. So now we'll set rb.velocity would be equal to the vector2.up multiply jump force. And then we'll decrease the extra jumps. And we have to set the extra jumps to the start value when we hit the ground. So for doing this, we will check if it's grounded. I mean, we're on the ground, sorry. So actually set the extra jump equal to the extra jump value. And the final thing that we have to do is we have to write else if we actually hit the space button, but our jump values would be actually kind of like 0, which means we can actually jump one time. But right now these lines of code cannot handle it. So for fixing this problem, let's first of all do the same thing that we would check if we hit the space button, and extra jump would be equal to this 0. And if we ground it, just put the orbital velocity equal to the vector to out, and we won't need to actually decrease the extra jump value. And go back to the Unity and set the jump force value and extra jumps value to whatever amount that you want. In my case, I wanna set it the jump force to 12 and extra jumps to 2, and I wanna actually change the gravity speed to 5. And let's hit the play and check it out. And it's working wonderful. Awesome. But one final problem is if I actually hit the, as you can see, the problem is we can actually stick to the walls. For solving this problem, we'll need a 2D physics material. So go create 2D physics material, and I will call it player mat. Set everything to 0 and assign it to this material field. Let's check it out one more time. And as you can see, the problem is solved and we no longer actually stick to the walls. So thank you very much for watching this video. If you enjoyed, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the future one.